What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to talk about the next super fight to make inside the UFC right now. As we all know, Alex Pereira is coming over a massive win over Khalil Roundtree Jr. at UFC 307. An incredible fight, by the way. One of my favorite fights I remember watching in recent history. But I do think that the next fight that needs to occur, we also have the heavyweight match at UFC 309 being Stipe Miocic and Jon Jones. I believe both of those fighters are going to retire. So Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall for the undisputed light heavyweight title, maybe the biggest fight, one of the biggest fights in UFC history, could go on early next year, possibly in Los Angeles, California in January of next year, or some other place where you could unify the belt, putting the greatest light heavyweight currently inside the UFC against the pound for pound, in my opinion, greatest heavyweight inside the organization, and Tom Aspinall, and let them go against one another. If you guys enjoyed the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys are always notified when UFC content releases daily. But without further ado, let's jump into this fight, talking why I believe Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira needs to happen next, on why it's such a big event for the UFC, and of how that this fight would be absolutely amazing for it to be occurring. So, as we all know, there is a massive question inside the UFC heavyweight division. Who is going to be fighting for the title next after Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic occurs? We can all presume that Jon Jones has said that he's going to retire after this fight. Stipe Miocic is even older than Jon Jones at 42 years old, so you got to imagine he's going to retire too. So what is going to be the next move inside the UFC heavyweight division? We all know that Tom Aspinall's waiting to fight for undisputed gold, considering that he already defended the interim title versus Curtis Blaydes at UFC 304, and he won the title at UFC 295 at MSG versus Sergey Pavlovich. But who would Tom Aspinall's opponent be? Because there's not really a rightful contender inside the UFC heavyweight division. We do have Cyril Gane, but Gane is coming off one win against Sergey Spivak, which really isn't that great of an opponent, considering that he lost to Jon Jones prior. Also, Alexander Volkov is fighting Cyril Gane, actually. That fight is occurring at UFC 310, so that's kind of set up. But I do think the perfect fight to make would be to actually give Alex Pereira his chance to go up and fight in the UFC heavyweight division, to give him an opportunity to chase 3-division gold. I know everyone is going out there asking for Pereira to do this. We got Conor McGregor going on Twitter and saying in interviews that he thinks that Alex Pereira should go fight for the heavyweight gold. I know that Joe Rogan is trying at every single possibility to get Alex Pereira to fight for the UFC heavyweight title. And there is actually some little interactions between Tom Aspinall and Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira actually posted after his UFC 307 fight with Khalil Roundtree Jr. that one of his favorite memories that in a picture that he's seen is Tom Aspinall actually staring him down prior to his UFC 300 performance, I believe it was, or UFC 303 performance. It was an incredible performance, but Tom Aspinall was actually in the crowd staring him down prior to a performance. And Tom Aspinall has come out and said multiple times that every single one of these fighters that thinks they're going to sit there and strike with Pereira, Aspinall is going to do the exact opposite. He said first time, as soon as that bell goes out, he's going to go and rugby tackle Alex Pereira into oblivion to go wrestle him to death. So ultimately, this fight I think is so good that you could put inside the UFC UFC heavyweight division. You get two of the strongest individuals in Alex Pereira and Tom Aspinall fighting one another. You give Tom Aspinall the ability to be a light heavyweight great, to capture undisputed UFC gold, but then you also give an ability for Alex Pereira to become the first 3-division champion inside the organization. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. Plus, the UFC gets one of the biggest events of all time, possibly headlining something in Los Angeles, California, or something like Miami, Florida, some massive event like that, which I think would be crazy to be had. But how does this fight go between the two individuals? And I do see Tom Aspinall getting himself a victory if he does do what he says he's going to do, and that is just going in there and taking Pereira down instantly, like he did in one of his fights that he got the rear naked choke. He went in there and took down Andrei Arlovski immediately and got the rear naked choke within like a minute and 15 seconds in the first round, just because Tom Aspinall is so strong. He's so powerful. He's got everything in the bag that he could go up against Alex Pereira. Now, the only thing that going up against Alex Pereira has is danger at every moment on the feet. Alex Pereira is the world's greatest kickboxer, in my opinion. This man is an absolute menace out there in the kickboxing development. He beat Israel Adesanya. He's beat Yuri Prochazka twice. He knocked out Jamal Hill in under 4 minutes. He beat Khalil Roundtree Jr., who looked amazing in that fight, and he looked like prime Anderson Silva in that 4th round. One of the most locked-in performances, right up there with Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, that Alex Pereira looked against Khalil Roundtree Jr. He was absolutely teeing off on that poor soul, who looked looked like he had all the heart in his body, just gave up on him with those 2 body shot for the knockout in that 4th round. But ultimately, I do think that this fight has so many different implications going into it, because if you see a Tom Aspinall takedown going in Alex Pereira's direction, what about the flying knee coming at him? And now if Tom Aspinall stays on the feet, he's so agile and so fast, and he's kind of an awkward boxer. He could actually go in there and clip someone like Alex Pereira. There's so many different things that could go on in this fight between these 2 individuals, and being in the heavyweight division and Alex being one of the strongest punchers in UFC history, this fight takes one shot to get knocked out cold. And then yes, I understand that Tom Aspinall is smart enough to understand and recognize that that Alex Pereira is one of the greatest kickboxers the UFC has ever seen, and to go in there and just take him down immediately. Don't let the ego get in the way, like Magomed Ankalaev is saying, and like Yuri Prochazka, Khalil Roundtree Jr. I understand that, but Tom Aspinall's genuinely understanding that Alex Pereira is an absolute 3-headed monster on the feet. He's got amazing kicks, he's got amazing strikes to the body, and he's got amazing hooks and everything under the sun for a kickboxer. So I do believe that this fight is an incredible fight to be had between 2 of the biggest stars in the organization right now. And like I said, I do have Tom Aspinall winning this fight right now. And I do think that this would be an amazing fight to kind of traverse the old UFC heavyweights with Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic and bring it to the new generation of fighters. I know that Alex Pereira isn't technically a new generation fighter, considering that he's 37, 38 years old, but he has so many characteristics of the new generation. He hasn't fought in the organization for that long. He's under 3 years inside the UFC, which is a massive thing considering that he's fought in already like 6 or 7 title fights. Also, Tom Aspinall is one of the biggest prospects the UFC's ever seen in this heavyweight division, and if he didn't tear his ACL, he probably would have became heavyweight champion long prior before he did. Ultimately, there's so many different things going on with this fight with Alex Pereira v. Tom Aspinall, and it's probably one of the best fights you could ever put on inside the UFC heavyweight division. Alex Pereira is one of the best kickboxers, like I've said time over and time over again, and there's no soul who wants to fight this man on the feet. But Tom Aspinall is one of the most well-rounded heavyweights in UFC history, getting these 2 massive individuals going against one another, creating one of the biggest fights in UFC history, and ultimately making an amazing fight to get undisputed gold with. I think that the next move for the UFC to make is easily make Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall for the undisputed heavyweight title once Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic retire. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please let me know what you think down below in the comment section of Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall. Who do you think is going to win this fight? What do you think about Alex Pereira being the first possible fighter inside the organization to capture three belts possibly? That would be middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight, which would be one of the most incredible things in UFC history to be done. Do you think Tom Aspinall can go in there and beat him? Do you think anyone could go beat Alex Pereira at this point? Because that man looks absolutely insane with his kickboxing. This fight, in my opinion, is one of the biggest fights you can make in UFC history, considering that Tom Aspinall is the undisputed, the real heavyweight champion, in my opinion, someone who is making Jon Jones scared to fight him. And you got Alex Pereira, probably the biggest name in the sport right now, who has saved 3 different cards this year. He came on 2 weeks notice to save UFC 303. There was no clear-cut main event for UFC 300 and UFC 307, and he went in and took fights on relatively short notice, about 6 weeks each, for both of those different camps, and he was also injured and sick for that UFC 307 bout. Ultimately, Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira is one of the most amazing fights that you could ever make inside this heavyweight division, and is ultimately the fight that I know the UFC wants to make. They just want everything to play out first, and that would be an absolutely gigantic pay-per-view that would be had for Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira for the undisputed UFC heavyweight title. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and if you guys enjoyed the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys always stay notified about the future UFC content coming very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.